The biggest challenge that we all were facing was, do we have the manufacturing capacity in India or not? And primarily all these capacities were maybe 80 to 90% of the capacity was imported from primarily from China. So as far as the solar boost is concerned, the entire capacity or the modules were manufactured and delivered to India.
So welcome to the Blue Circle and thank you everyone for joining in. It is such a big privilege and a pleasure to reconnect with everyone, our distinguished panelists who are handpicked because of the think input and the rich experience they bring in. And thank you to our distinguished audience for joining in as well. We've received over 150 CXO registrations, most of whom are leaders. Many of them are repeat visitors to our webinars, so which is very encouraging and provides us and motivates us to provide even higher levels of dialogue to the online modes as well. For those of you who are new with us today, the Blue Circle is an exclusive community and ecosystem curated for business leaders to help them manage disruptive times and become future ready. We focus on four fundamental sectors, which are energy, e-mobility, healthcare, and real estate. We also present socioeconomic insights, which ultimately determine the evolving complexion of the market. In response to the COVID challenge, the Blue Circle has also accentuated its digital presence. One of the many modes we employ is our weekly webinar series and our digital publication. And in addition to this, and you would be happy to know that we will be very soon launching an exclusive digital platform for leaders, somewhat like the LinkedIn for leaders, where we will present them with the opportunity of connecting with people just like them, also house high quality curated content, meaningful conversations like we do on a weekly basis, which will be more regular from there on, and business opportunities will also be added to it across the four sectors. So those leaders who are interested, please do write to us. We already begun our selective outreach for memberships, and in the last 2 months, we've got over 1,000 leaders who signed up on the platform. We will be launching very soon in the month of Jan. And the topic for today's session is production linked incentive the solution to boost domestic solar manufacturing? The latest production linked incentive scheme, with a total outlay of nearly 2 lakh crore rupees over a 5-year period, has created a flutter in the market. Launched to encourage 10 key industries, including the sunrise sector of solar renewable energy, it is expected to make Indian manufacturers globally competitive, attract investments in the areas of core competency and cutting edge technology, ensure efficiencies, create economies of scale, enhance exports, and make India an integral part of the global supply chain. We are privileged to have invited industry leaders to discuss the solar sector's current manufacturing status of PV modules and the other opportunities and challenges ahead. I will just, in the best interest of time, briefly mention their names and designations. We have with us Mr. Ashish Kulkarni, Associate Partner of Ernst & Young, Mr. K.S. Popli, Advisor International Solar Alliance, Mr. T.R. Kishor Nair, COO and Director Avaada Group, and the Chair and Moderator for the session is Mr. Pavan Choudary, best-selling author, CEO French multinational Vigon India, Chairman MTI, and sits on several boards across the country. Kindly note that we will have Q&A towards the end of the session. Some of you already shared excellent questions and they are with the moderator and chair. So now I request Mr. Choudary to please chair and moderate the session, sir.
Thank you very much, Siddharth. Energy is something which propels agriculture, manufacturing, services, mobility, healthcare, education, productivity. So energy is geopolitics, as they say. And a little bit of history just to trace how the wheel is turning. When the last time the map of energy was being drawn or the superpowers were claiming their territories, Churchill, realizing that his ships have to be fueled by oil and coal will not do, carved out Iraq. USA carved out the protectorate of Saudi Arabia. Russia went and dug its heels in the CIS countries. China went to Iran, Sudan, Nigeria, and they divided the spoils. Now the situation is changing. Oil, which was a mined resource, is being replaced by a manufactured resource, which is what we are going to discuss today, which will be a good replacement in many areas of the world. That is the solar piece, the photovoltaic cell. And 70% of the solar capacity increase in the next 10 years is going to come from India, US, and China. So India is also going to be one of the authors which can write new rules. To be able to do so, it requires push on the photovoltaic manufacturing piece, for which the government is bringing the PLI, the Production Linked Incentive Scheme. Before we go to the PLI, let me ask Kishor Nair that, Kishor, where are we right now as far as manufacturing of photovoltaic cell is concerned? Where does the country stand? Kishor.
Thank you, Pavan, and good evening to all the delegates who have joined this conference. Let me go one step behind that. Today, the capacity target for India is 175,000 megawatt to be completed by 2022. That is the plan that all of us are working. And the capacity target has been increased to 450 gigawatt of capacity to be achieved by 2030. So this is a target the entire industry is working. So that includes me as a developer and all the module suppliers or the ancillary industry suppliers. Everybody's got a target to work on today. So this is one of the major factors which has brought in a lot of interest into the sector, that maybe 10 years back when we were working on a target of 20,000 megawatt to be completed by 22. So that capacity got increased to 100,000. So that has got in lot of interest, and once there is a scale available, everyone has got interest in investment into the sector. And with lot of enabling policies, the sector got a big boost to attract investors into the sector. So as far as capacity is concerned, today we have got roughly about, I'm purely talking about out of say 95 gigawatt of capacity, roughly about 38,000 megawatt is from the solar sector. And most of this capacity got added in the last maybe 5 years or so. But the biggest challenge that we all were facing was, do we have the manufacturing capacity in India or not? And primarily all these capacities, or maybe 80 to 90% of the capacity was imported primarily from China. So as far as the solar boost is concerned, the entire capacity or the modules were manufactured and delivered to India. And as you rightly said, India, China, and the US were the three major countries which was boosting the sector also. But seeing the capacity addition program in India, unfortunately, let me put it that way, unfortunately, China has seen this development and the growth in a far better way, and they have increased their production capacity multifolds. And the reason why India got this boost in generation capacity addition was because the module prices were coming down, and that has attracted, because of the prices were coming down, the tariff in India was also coming down much faster than what was expected by the consultants like EY or all this, the prediction from the prediction rate. With the tariff going down below the conventional conventional generation tariffs, lot of much more interests were coming into the sector, and that again added that more capacity will be added. It was like a cascading effect. So today with the solar tariff reached a capacity of, we reached a tariff of rupees 2. We also need to make sure that the module prices are also within that range. But unfortunately, when China has got gigawatts of capacity by each and most of the leading manufacturers, in India, the main problem was that we were not having the required capacity to meet this challenge. But the reason why as of today, what I understand is that the module capacity is roughly around 8 to 9 gigawatt of capacity, and the cell capacity is roughly around maybe 2 to 3 gigawatt of capacity. But the problem was always, there was always like an India-Pakistan stand taken by the developers as well as the module manufacturers. The developers said that we have committed a tariff, the risk is on us to deliver the project within the tariff. So the developers wanted the modules to be delivered within that cost, what is considered at the time of bidding. But the manufacturers found that they wanted an assured market. So that is why the whole concept of incentivizing the manufacturing was brought in. And with the Atmanirbhar Bharat, lot of pressure or lot of thrust is being put on incentivizing the manufacturing sector, and to discourage import, the safeguard duty was imposed on the import of modules into India. And also discussions are in progress for putting additional customs duty also. So this is the current state of affairs. We can discuss in detail, but let me stop it here. So this is the current state of affairs. So we are all looking at, the developers are looking at competitive pricing of modules in line with the international market with a quality product, whereas the manufacturers are looking at an assured market so that they can invest more into the manufacturing sector. So that is where the question of incentivizing the manufacturing to become more cost competitive.
Excellent points, excellent context you have given. And you have said that one of the important pieces is the fact that the deployment is being primarily done through imported products. 85% of the deployment is happening through imported products. And which is why there has been a little bit of a challenge in getting this whole thing moving towards the manufacturing of modules of cells in the country. Great points you have made. What would you like to add to this, Ashish, as far as where are we is concerned in the manufacturing space of photovoltaic cells? Oh, you're on mute.
So yeah, I think most of the points, this is very well known. I think the competition, and also people have started already questions on the chat box, which is in relation to whether or not the developers can make any money if the with the prices falling down in terms of tariffs, and also at the same time, if you look at the manufacturing costs, and if you look at where we are starting today in terms of making cells and modules over here in India, that's always something which uh, it will always be chicken and egg situation. But wherever we have made a good start, I would say, that with the PLI scheme coming in. What else can be done apart from PLI? I think there is a lot of work to be done on the financing part of it, and plus there is on low cost interest rates, and Popli ji is there, so he can also pick up on it. But also on the fact that the cost of power for manufacturing these cells or modules, I think that also needs to be looked into. Whereas we do have some incentive schemes for exports in the SEZ zones, but similar kind of incentives need also be provided for manufacturing outside the SEZ zone. So that is something which needs to be looked into, and I'm sure the representations have gone in this regard from the industry to the government, and the government is also looking into these, which will be over and above the PLI scheme, and that would essentially look into making it much more competitive for Indian manufacturers to be in the market, as well as help in reducing the tariffs further as we go. And once the
Very good.
performance increases, you do have the PLF and the CUF also increasing, and hence it would make more sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think you've added to what Kishore said and increased the spectrum of the discussion. What Kishore said was that, or what he alluded to was that the Indian product is roughly 20 to 30% more costly than the imported piece. So the PLI is actually a great initiative, which is really required. Some kind of a support given to the Indian manufacturer as he begins. The second point which both of you tried to bring out was that if the total capacity of manufacturing of photovoltaic cells is only 3 gigawatts, and there are 17 players in that space, and only half of those players are operating at 100 megawatt capacity. Whereas actually the lower benchmark these days to bring the efficiency and scaling up is 500 megawatts, which requires roughly $50 million to invest. So here again, somewhere you have pointed out the need for bringing in some kind of support. The other point which you have brought in here is that the power cost, if particularly as you backward integrate, the power cost becomes a very big portion of the total cost. So that also has to be looked at. Great additions. Let me come to Mr. Popli. Mr. Popli has 37 years of experience in this and similar spaces. What would you like to add to the complexion of this picture which is developing, Mr. Popli, which Kishore and Ashish have spoken about, as to where are we in the manufacturing space for photovoltaic cells?
See, my take would be, sir, we should not get into at this stage into smaller nitty-gritties, because if you look at the bigger picture, we are adding globally 100 gigawatt per annum, 100 gigawatt or so of solar capacity per annum. As per the latest IRENA report, this is going to go up to 300 gigawatt in next 10 years. The total capacity that is going to be added for solar is around 8,000 gigawatt by 2050, or maybe little earlier. So this, and second point is that India has already given a huge target of 175 gigawatt, and then we had enhanced it to 450 gigawatt. So the policy space is there. The government is bound to support this, and maybe out of 450 gigawatt, maybe around 300 gigawatt would be solar. So it is very, very important that we have to promote manufacturing of solar at this stage. If we don't do it at this stage, when will that stage come then? And therefore, it is very important that we need to give them, incentivize the manufacturers, so that the difference in whatever the developers are getting at present and what our manufacturers will be supplying is reduced to a great extent. So that is why it is very important. And I remember when I joined IREDA, there was a discussion in 9-10, and a big industrial house was thinking of putting a polysilicon plant. And at that stage, somehow the incentive scheme could not be finalized. The proper incentive scheme could not be given. Had that happened at that time, probably we would have been in a different space.
No, very good point. And I feel that the point which you are making is coming from the sensitivity that the cost of capital which is required in converting quartz into silicon is very high. It's a carbothermic process. And then from converting the silicon into ingots is also a very high cost, capital intensive piece. Even the wafer cutting from ingots is much more expensive than making cells. So the cost is very high, and you are saying that surely and the growth is going to come in the market. We cannot be left high and dry as we were left when the first energy maps were being drawn in 1920s. This time we should be in the map drawing space. So the production linked incentive scheme is great. And we also want to be that humble think tank with the help of the entire panel as to think and come out with suggestions for the government that what are the learnings which we can have from earlier such schemes in India and abroad. So that we can dive deep and tell them that this is why your scheme did not work, or this is why the other scheme in other countries did not work. So please remember, these are red flags, and these are the green areas in which if you will move, we will be able to come out with some success in this, real success in this space. On that note, I'll ask Kishor. Kishor, SIP scheme had come. What was the SIP scheme and what was the outcome of the scheme, and what are the learnings from there? Kishor.
The SIP scheme was, as I said earlier, I'm a generator, I'm not a manufacturer, but we have also studied the SIP schemes, and we also in between, we analyzed the manufacturing sector, because for having a backward integration, we thought whether we can combine the manufacturing with the generation, the possibilities of that. So with my limited knowledge, what I understand is that the SIP scheme, that was special incentive package scheme, was brought in about 2012. That was basically giving the capital subsidy for manufacturing for the electronic industry. And they had two schemes. That was one, if your industry is set up in the SEZs, there was, I think, a 20% subsidy that was purely for promoting the export business, and the 25% capital subsidy was given if you are going to produce this in the country for selling it in the domestic market. And there were a lot of conditions attached to it. I don't want to get into the detailing of that, but the period was that you can avail this scheme within 10 years of period. And then under that scheme, lot of companies got registered into the scheme, mainly for manufacturing that was a time when mobile got into it, and plus lot of TVs, the LED TVs or LCD TVs came into picture. So all these were the industries which took major advantage of this the SIP scheme, which got again amended in 2015 as modified SIP scheme. So that is why the MSIP scheme was coming into. And then somebody has to apply for it, and then there will be an evaluation committee which evaluates, and so that was the scheme. It got amended in 2017, then again it got amended in 2018, I believe. But coming back to the solar sector, as far as I know, that the companies have started registering under the MSIP scheme for manufacturing way back in 2013 to 2015-16, and as far as I know, there were some 7 companies who had registered. The 7 module or cell manufacturing companies had registered under the MSIP schemes, but I don't think any company has got any subsidy under the scheme. I don't know the reasons, whether the technical evaluation of those applications were not done properly, or whether they were not meeting the criteria for getting the subsidy or not. But the unfortunate part is that none of these companies got any capital subsidy under the MSIP schemes. That is my information.
Absolutely correct. That means the MSIP scheme, which was a good initiative in terms of intention, perhaps was lacking something in our architecture which would have allowed people to board, or the barriers to boarding were so high that that none of the incentives in SIP schemes for solar manufacturing were disbursed despite interest from the industry.
Only solar, but it got disbursed in other industry like
In other,
mobile TV
absolutely.
and everything. They got some disbursement from the MSIP schemes, but to my knowledge, nothing in the solar industry.
Absolutely, which means that the MSIP scheme, if formulated well, if it can work in one sector, why it cannot work in the other sector, which again points out to the importance of accurate formulation. So, bringing that point to you, Ashish.
I just want to update you. I just got some reports yesterday. I was just looking at 322 as of 28th of February 2018, 322 applications with investment amounting to 133,000 crores received. Then 19 applications with investment approximately 12,253 crores recommended by the appraisal committee for approval. 80 applications with investments of approximately 42,193 crores closed due to incomplete applications or not meeting the eligibility criteria. And 73 applications involving investments of 14,000 crores are under appraisal. It goes like that. Disbursement was done, yeah, minor. 2014-15, 35 crores was disbursed. 15-16, 4.78 crores. 16-17, 2.97 crores. 17-18, 79 crores. And the total disbursed till 18, that is the record that I'm having, is 121 crores. I thought just update some statistics.
No, very good. Thank you very much. So we should make sure that the 4,500 crores which is allocated this time to the solar sector gets fully utilized through the inputs of practitioners and thinkers like you all. And I'll come to the next thinker, which is Ashish Kulkarni, as to what is it that we can learn from our own experience or the experience of other countries as to what kind of incentives in a generic manner support manufacturing of photovoltaic cell, and what are the ones which don't work. Ashish.
So Pavan, I think it's if you look at the entirety of the situation where manufacturing started in Germany, US, and I mean elsewhere also. I think we also started at the same time, and we were exporting at some point in time solar modules, and that is something all countries came up with certain policies and certain incentive schemes, and in mid 2008, 2009, 10, 11 kind of thing, then China came in, and then all these countries or the policies which they had done up, and the incentives they gave also failed at some point in time,
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, if any one country comes with a large manufacturing base and brings down the cost, it is bound to happen that these incentive schemes also need to evolve. So two things which we don't do. One is that every quarter or every 2-3 years, if we do our policy analysis and understand what are the gaps, so that never happens. So that maybe probably that could give us some learnings. And then second part is that to bring in comprehensivity, longevity, and a forward thinking kind of goalpost whenever we come up with incentives. So you have SIPs, you have PLI, which is again forward looking, because you're increasing the performance year on year, and you are increasing the incentive also based on that. So this is a very forward looking scheme, by the way. I should congratulate Niti Aayog and for that. But you need to add these two other layers of bringing down the power cost, bringing down the financing cost, get everything in one go, so that at least for now, or for the forward for the short term, we are in a good place to actually start and give it a boost. When the whole world is looking at us, we need to give that boost to the sector.
Excellent point. You have said that thorough spade work, a watertight policy, which is then reviewed every 2-3 years. That is it still relevant to the changing situation
Yeah.
in the world and in the space that it operates? Very good point. And you also said that USA, Germany, etc., all of them failed. Why
Yeah.
did
So yeah, we've
and what all did they do? So, as you know, USA and Germany both, USA even brought in Super 201 against China on this piece, and raised import barriers like anything. In fact, banned imports from China. China started exporting its photovoltaic cells from other countries. Then USA closed the loop, banned it from those countries also, and then China moved its production capacity from those countries back to China, scaled up, and cut the cost so much that Super 201 also would not work. The deployers in USA started protesting that we cannot be so much more expensive than the rest of the world. So, and Germany thought that Germany concentrated on fully automating the piece, but rather it perhaps did not realize that cost cutting and scaling up is more important. And Germany's import restrictions or Europe's import restrictions also brought down the manufacturing capacity from 7 gigawatt to 3.1 gigawatt. So all those learnings also should be factored in. Popli साहब आपका क्या कहना है?
See, there are two things that have, made our manufacturing sector to suffer. One was that we lost in WTO. And that was when these manufacturers lost on that protection that they were getting from domestic content requirement. The second was that if the manufacturers have made investment in manufacturing on the basis of incentives being made available to them, then on some ground or the other, because the two cases came to me and they could have been revived had they got that MSIP subsidy or incentive that was there. I did not go into why they were not getting it, but what I realized was substantial investment has been made there and a holistic approach should have been taken and some money should have been given to them so that they would have survived. And that is how the ecosystem is created, because now that system, the investments, then the bankers also back out because they realize that yes, this may. So bankers are very, very reluctant to finance manufacturing today because they've seen that these earlier manufacturing investments had gone, they have not survived. So it is very important that once the incentive scheme comes, if investment is made, keeping that incentive scheme in mind, then the government should find ways and means to support the industry. I don't know exact reasons why that was not given to them, but that was very, very unfortunate that they have made investment, they had gone, public issue was brought, and then the investment was not coming, and then the support from domestic content requirement somehow they lost and government was not able to do something. So those things are very, very important when you are trying to create a large ecosystem. So now also, once we promise something, if there is a change of government, things happen, though there is no likelihood. I mean, what I am saying is earlier there was, and then if you rediscuss the policy, then that makes the manufacturer suffer unnecessarily and industry suffers.
Absolutely beautiful point. Just to remind the audience of the context which you're bringing, the WTO piece was when the government reserved 50% of the purchases in its tenders for domestically manufactured product. That time, the WTO objected, saying that this is not governmental purchase, this is commercial purchase. So you cannot reserve the tender 50% for your domestic product. The government, let me say, government intelligently moved ahead. It said that CPSUs are government, so CPSUs we can reserve. Defense is government, we can reserve. Rooftop is also somewhere government, we can reserve. But still, it could reserve only a fraction of what was reserved. So that brings us back to what Ashish said in the beginning, that the intentions of the government are good, dynamic, but we should thoroughly test, make our policy in a watertight manner. Investments, yes, if investments are made, technologies are changing very fast in this area. There should be some kind of a buffer in the PLI for technology change also. And the reluctance to invest, reluctance for the banks to fund is also a double whammy, because as it is, the cost of capital is 11% here and 5% in China. And then combined with reluctance to invest or to fund is a double whammy. Kishor, what would you like to add to this?
See, the biggest problem why our manufacturing sector is not picking up is because for a generator, once you set up the project, the capital cost is already invested. There is no further investment required. You don't look for a market. There is a long-term PPA signed, so my investment is already protected. Whereas for a manufacturing industry, every year he has to go and find out a market for his produce, whatever for which he has invested the capital in his industry. So the most important factor today is that how an industry, a solar manufacturing industry, is assured of a market. So that is the most critical aspect, and that is where we are failing in providing them a long-term visibility on the market. So the biggest differential today why the domestic industry is not getting a market is because of the price differential in the international market versus the domestic market. So any incentive that government is bringing in should be able to bridge the gap in the pricing cost of production. I will not put it as pricing, but the cost of production and resultant pricing to be competitive with the international market. So initially, when I said the differential is maybe around say 20 to 25% differential is still existing. So government should come up with policies how they can compensate so that their manufacturing or the production cost is reduced. So some of the factors which as a common industry of generators and manufacturers, what we suggested was that maybe we can, I will just list down some of the points. I got some documents which we had presented to the government earlier. Is one was on 5% interest subvention, tax holidays for the first 10 years, maybe till they pick up. Ashish talked about subsidized electricity, because electricity is a major component of their cost of production, subsidized electricity. Committed capacity to be utilized. That is the most important aspect, that how do you ensure that at least for the first 5 years, you give an assured market for their output or the product. And then all the ancillary industries. Today, what is happening is that most of the Indian solar manufacturers are importing the ingredients to that, like the wafers or the ingots, silicon to dur ki baat hai. All those things are still getting imported from China. We are already attacking the cells or the modules, which are the last two parts of manufacturing. But the complete chain of manufacturing should also be domestically manufactured. Then only you can have a totally independent manufacturing in India. That is not happening today. Even the ancillary industries, like when you have got free import of modules or cells from China, which was happening earlier. But when you are importing the ingredients like wafer or any of those items, that is also getting taxed, or the duty is imposed on that. So how do you make sure that they get at least their ingredients cheaper? Even the glass or the EVA sheet, which is also getting some mostly imported, there is a duty on that also. That all adds to the cost of production in India. Whereas the Chinese manufacturers get all these things protected. And then we have even recommended that there should be some GST waiver on the manufacturing sector as well. And then land is another cost component coming. So give them maybe subsidized government land or stamp duty waiver, all those things should be done on that. And then electricity duty. One is the subsidized electricity, second is electricity duty can be waived off. And then water charges, subsidized water, all these things, you can look at how their production cost can be reduced. So these are some of the suggestions. And then maybe it could be a stupid idea, but another thing what came to my mind in one of our earlier discussion was that, see, today you need an assured market. My suggestion is that maybe SECI can come with a bid for procuring solar modules, maybe gigawatt scale. They can come up with, like today there is a bid which is coming for 2 gigawatt of solar tenders on tariff based bidding. SECI can come up with a bid for 2 gigawatt of solar module procurement. So by doing that, and let there be a competitive bidding, domestically manufactured competitive bidding, where all the domestic manufacturers can bid for that. Like we have got a 2-year window for manufacturing or for generation of projects or generation of electricity from the solar projects. Let there be a 1.5 years window for them to manufacture and supply. So once that gives them an assured market for their product. And with that, SECI can come up with related bids that let there be a tariff-based bidding, which should use the modules which are manufactured and bid out under these tenders. So that gives them a price. And when I am bidding for a generation project, I know that this is the module cost, which is an assured through a tender from SECI. So I know what is my cost of solar modules through a tender, which is assured by SECI. And with that pricing, I will go and bid for my generation projects. So this is maybe a stupid idea, but this can give some thoughts to the think tank, and maybe we can look at even this as an option, that how can we give an assured market. So if there is a 5 gigawatt or 10 gigawatt of module manufacturing tender, which if SECI can bring in, and then with that output and with a firm pricing of the solar modules, I can bid my tariff-based bids also. So you can think about such things.
No, excellent points. You have beautifully summed up almost through the entire spectrum. You have said, first of all, give me adequate support. That means the PLI should not fall short of the difference in cost which is existing between imported cost of production and the domestic cost of production. That means at least 25 to 30% should be the PLI.
Pavan, I can just maybe add one point here, is that when we are giving this capital subsidy, rather than making it as a capital subsidy, if this is made as a VGF scheme,
viability gap funding.
Funding. So that can be even linked to the production, because today what is happening is that once the capital subsidy is given to a manufacturer, he has invested that money into the manufacturing setup. Once the factory is set up, the capital subsidy, which is a government subsidy, is already utilized. But if he is not going to use that factory for production, that means the money becomes dead money, and the factory becomes, or the company becomes, an NPA. So that is how, if you can link up with a VGF based scheme, that will be more productive.
Yeah. So the gap should be kept in mind, as you're saying. Adequate support, consistent support. That means it should be a long-term support, and it should be an assured support, as you said in the last piece. And plus, PPAs should not be so frequently challenged in the court. State governments and all are going and challenging the PPAs in the court, which is making sometimes the EPC as well as the manufacturer a little nervous. The other point which you brought in was whether it is electricity or interest subvention or GST waiver, you are, I feel, keeping in mind that the main cost elements are the BOM, the utilities, labor, and finance. Finance has been spoken about, Ashish, also. So you want to cover the entire piece. Great points there. And the last point which you made was about government land. Government giving away land. This is very commonly done in China also. They give away land for solar because it is a priority sector. And companies, when they sometimes allowed to use the excess land to generate income. Many of those companies legitimately have sold off that land or even built apartments there to generate income. So that kind of a scheme allows for expansion in future, or renting it for some purposes, and becomes another revenue stream. So that is the level the competition is going to support its companies. And we are glad that a prime minister like Mr. Modi is there, who understands the importance of this sector in terms of geopolitics also, and hope that the PLI scheme will incorporate these points also. Ashish, what would you like to add to this?
I think there is a whole lot of emphasis on understanding where we are with regards to our commitments to the Paris Agreement, and climate change is a big issue, and solar energy is going to be one of the key angles in fighting climate change to be true. This is worldwide, and there is in Paris Agreement there is something called Article 6, which also talks about tradable, carbon related assets. So basically, all the emission reductions could be traded bilaterally from one country to another country. That's one more thing which we could look at a country level to incentivize further the manufacturers or the generators. I mean, in that sense, that whoever is contributing towards solar energy could be incentivized by creating those carbon assets under the Article 6 and then traded with bilaterally to with countries, and create a pool of fund for this particular manufacturing, and bring in that additional incentive to the sector. I think it should be, again, it used to be primarily when in 10 years, I mean, 10 years back, it used to be only for the generators, which came through the Clean Development Mechanism, CDM. But now there is a possibility that we could, incentivize everyone in the entire supply chain, right from manufacturing to generation. So we should keep that in mind.
Excellent point. From manufacturing to generation, from demand to supply, everybody has to be incentivized. Coming to Mr. Popli, another question which comes up is whether we should go for scale. Like, for example, China has consolidated small players into one entity to provide for scale, which helps in sourcing, ecosystem development, technological development, etc. Or should it be an inclusive scheme? What is it that is required, in your opinion?
I think we should not be going for scale right now, not for the large scale, because one thing also that came to my mind was that we should also look at whether we want the whole supply chain to be there, because probably I had read earlier that polysilicon manufacture may not be a great idea, because that is being controlled by two countries, and you cannot probably control prices for that and then start doing that. So that also strategically we will have to look into. We should also think about incentivizing R&D so that the efficiency of the cells keeps moving up, and we are with the global industry where the solar efficiencies take us to. So these are the 2 points that we must look into when we are going for manufacturing. And probably because we have a huge scheme, Kusum scheme of 25,000 megawatt. So even smaller players can chip in supplying that. And there is a huge market that is being created in solar going forward. So I think whatever way we look at, maybe the integration of the bigger players would also be there sooner or later, but maybe smaller players will be doing very fine to begin with.
Very good point. In fact, what you are saying is, and I'm looking at it from this point of view, that in 2006, only 2 of the top 10 cell manufacturers were Chinese. Today, all the top 10 are Chinese.
Right.
But you are saying it is not necessary to go the same way. It can be an inclusive scheme where the big companies, they create the air currents in which the smaller companies' flight is facilitated.
Right.
And by providing ecosystem, by providing technological advancement, quality, etc. And the smaller companies provide that frugality and that nimbleness which is required to keep the motion forward in this fast changing sector. So you would say that it should be an inclusive scheme. The other point which Ashish made was also very relevant in climate change. The climate change agenda, which was forcefully submerged in the last 4 years by America, is now resurfacing because the new leader in America. And also the fact that COVID has hit us in such a way, a natural disaster, that we have become really really sensitive to any further natural disasters being triggered by our own insensitivity to scientific appeals. So I feel that is also a great point. There is a lot to discuss on this, but I feel we have covered the main tenets around which the PLI should be framed, so that we have something which Ashish said is thoroughly made and also which can be modified as we move forward every couple of years. So I would now like to come to the questions which have come. So first question, and let me ask this from Kishor. Will the PLI have an impact on the quality of the products manufactured? This question is coming from Adil Anwar of W1 Consulting. And maybe he has this point in mind that sometimes the domestically made cell or module is supposed to have a degradation of 0.6 to 0.7% higher than its foreign counterpart, Chinese counterpart annually. Maybe he's coming from this piece, that will PLI have an impact on the quality of product manufactured? Kishor.
See, as it is, PLI will not have an impact on the quality because PLI is given to support them. So this in fact, this should not in any way affect the quality of modules by the domestic manufacturers. But there is another side story is that probably the question was asked in that context, that do the domestic modules meet up in quality with the international modules? Maybe let me put it bluntly, as the Chinese modules or not. So this had been a question in the past also, that whether the Indian modules are meeting up with the quality of with the same as Chinese or not. There are apprehensions on that, to be very frank, but government of India has put in the BIS standards and the ALMM. All these things are made to ensure that the Indian modules, the quality of the Indian modules are no way inferior, or it should be of better quality than any other modules produced anywhere in the world. So that is the effort that is put in by the government of India through this ALMM and all. And I am very sure that the domestic modules also should have the same quality. But the problem is that some of the Indian lenders refuse to fund the projects which are domestically manufactured. That is the sad part of it. Maybe Mr. Kohli can also throw some lights. Is there any funding challenges when the projects are set up with domestic modules? We have faced these problems because even the Indian lending institutions have refused to fund projects with using the domestic modules. So,
excellent question posed by you, Kishor. So let us go to Mr. Popli and ask him.
Yeah.
Have you also witnessed this kind of discrimination against domestically manufactured product? Because I agree with Kishore that I have also received quite favorable reports on the domestically manufactured product in terms of quality, Mr. Popli.
And Mr. Popli was a lender.
He would be the lender.
As a lender.
Actually, the question, please don't take it as an accusation, Mr. Popli. It is only a question.
No. See, as a lender in IREDA, on record, we have never refused Indian manufacturer. Whether it was Vari, Vikram Solar, Premier Solar, absolutely we had funded those projects because we knew that they are there. They are in our country. So we had less faith in Chinese. And let me also tell you, in 2015-16, there was a huge question mark on Chinese products and quality of Chinese modules. Everybody was questioning whether they will survive, they will not survive. And when I visited China, I discussed this with them and they said, sir, we understand that and our government is focusing on quality. And he took me around and said, sir, in all stages of manufacturing, they had put so many quality checks. And they said, sir, now we are trying to improve the image of Chinese industry. Also, we are trying to improve the quality of Chinese products. And that is what is required. I mean, and in India, surprisingly, the quality of the modules and panels was not that bad. That was, and they were exporting in 15-16 before WTO, the Indian manufacturers were exporting to Europe. So I felt that yes, and we had supported as lender, we had always supported Indian manufacturers.
Yeah, very good. Ashish, your comments on this?
No, I think it's very well covered. It's as Popli ji said that we were exporting. We were exporters. I mean, we started with exporting these modules, and I don't have any doubts, and there are quite a few institutions to back them up. Only thing is that there was that I remember the 2015-16 also for the fact that many of the Chinese module manufacturers also went bankrupt, and quite a few companies also closed down. So in that sense, there is a lot more um, emphasis, a lot more confidence if for Indian manufacturers. I don't think that quality issues is any more a question. Coming to the question of the specific question whether PLI scheme would impact the quality of the so basically if you improvise, what the PLI scheme says is if you improvise on the performance, year on year you will get more and more subsidies because you will be investing more in the technology, you will be investing more in getting the technology up to the mark, or increasing in the say if you're increasing in efficiency, then you will get more incentivized based on that. So there is a possibility year on year you increasing your incentive to yourself if you improve on the efficiency. And I think there is one more parameter which is thermal coefficient. So I think if it would affect in the long run, it would affect for the better. But at the same time, what Popli ji made a statement in the initial point in time that we should not go into nitty-gritties, and we should look at the overall picture of the entirety of how solar can get penetrated into the system. I have one small point and one submission on that. It is not just about large scale grid connected solar or rooftop solar. It is also about how you have building integrated PV, say suppose, how you have flexible solar modules, which may not have that kind of efficiency, but they can be molded in terms of you can just mold those modules into as per the requirement of your house or as per the requirement of your wall, and you can make it into much more solarized country and much more inclusive in nature. So while PLI is a good start, but this also opens the door for a lot of innovation, for many other incentives to come in, to make it much more, holistic and comprehensive.
Absolutely. So we have a series of webinars, and we've had several others. We focus on a particular topic every time. Whenever we are talking about the technological improvements which are coming already in the solar cell space, printing of solar cells, bio cells, solar cells, etc., we will surely once again get back to you. Coming to the point which you were making, that quality. You made a beautiful point, and I was just reminded every pioneer is accused of inadequate quality. Whether it is China, somebody said, I mean, Mr. Popli said to 2016, China's products were criticized, or India, or even Germany. All these products have been criticized. I was reminded when the first washing machine came, those companies which were making washing machine, they were before that the thing which had come was bulb. So bulb was put into the socket. There was no concept of a switch. So these washing machines also were plugged in directly to the socket, and they used to immediately start running. So when they were running, the hair of the women many a time got suddenly caught because there was no switch system. So lot of negative publicity came that these machines have come which wash clothes, but actually they make you bald, they make women bald and things like that. But ultimately they made the killing, they made the new pioneering product reach out. So I feel that in the beginning, this kind of let me say feeling is natural, and also as our experience in making the product is increased and our experience in competing with other products increases, all polishing comes through friction along just as in quality. So I'm sure we will find our space there. There is no serious thought given to end of life management of solar energy waste that will heap up in multi-tons in near future. Why not enforce stringent laws to compulsorily recycle all solar energy waste and address climate change? Is some work already happening in this area, Kishor? Does the silicon which is recovered efficiently, does it have the possibility of reducing our overall cost of BOM, Kishor?
As of now, this is a very gray area, and there is no specific policies in recycling or using these damaged modules, or maybe the modules maybe after 25 years, what to do with this. There is no policy as it is, and this is an area of concern. But maybe we are all thinking that going forward, there could be some policies coming in for safe disposal of these modules. I think that's all what can I add on to this. Great. What was your second part? You asked one more.
This was the part that what is already happening. You're right. The industry is getting ready to how to retrieve this waste and process it. And if it gets reprocessed, then surely the cost of raw material also will come down, because some of it will not have to be mined again, and that will also have other ecological advantages. Great points. There are many more questions. Many of them have come on my WhatsApp. Some have come here. At least 2-3 pages of questions I have received already. So my request is that in keeping the time thing in mind, we will now need to sign off. But perhaps Blue Circle will make sure that the questions get answered, especially from the relevant speakers, relevant panelists. Siddharth.
So certainly, Mr. Choudary, we will request all our guests to share in the questions which they wish, and the ones which are not answered, we will reach out to leaders on the panel, request them for some of their time. So thank you very much, sirs. Our leaders and I have taken home excellent nuggets from today's conversation, and very well moderated, Mr. Choudary. Thank you. I'm still receiving positive messages from leaders on LinkedIn and over email and on my WhatsApp as well. And so thank you to our members and guests for staying till the end and for sharing excellent questions. Along with our weekly webinar series, we will also soon be taking these discussions on the exclusive digital networking platform, which we are curating specifically for leaders in sectors energy, e-mobility, healthcare, and real estate. The LinkedIn for Leaders will be launching very soon next month. So whether you would like to engage with us as experts or as learners on the panel, leaders are invited to connect with us for membership and join the energy circle and get access to the other allied industry circles which we're building. So thank you once again, and we look forward to having you all join us in the future.
And thank you to a great panel and a great audience. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.